My name is Reslyn Lassegue, and I'm doing my project on the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act. The brief history of Wall Street. In March 1792, 24 of New York City's leading merchants met secretly at Corinne's Hotel to discuss a way to bring order to the securities business and to wrest it from their competitors and auctioneers. 2 months later, on May 17th, 1792, these merchants signed a document named the Buttonwood Agreement, named after their traditional meeting place, a buttonwood tree. The agreement called for the signers to trade securities amongst themselves, to set trading fees, and not participate in other auctions of securities. These 24 men had founded what was to become the New York Stock Exchange of today. The exchange would later be located to Wall Street. There has been many key moments in Wall Street that had required change within the stock exchange. Started with 1929, the Great Depression. In 1929, stocks prices were 400% higher than they have been, and the insider had made their fortunes and could no longer sustain the con. So on October 23rd, 1929, the market fell 31 points. Stock prices fell an additional 49 points on October 28th, and on the 29th, the entire market fell. This crash affected millions of Americans. Millions of Americans lost their jobs, their homes, their way of life. Fast forward to 1987, the Wall Street crash of 1987, which is also known as Black Monday, occurred on October 19th. The Dow Jones fell an astonishing 508 points, the largest one-day loss in stock market history. The insiders running the con game landed on their feet quickly and misdirected the public's attention, laying the blame on computerized and program training. And as we fast forward to 2007, with the crisis in subprime mortgage markets in the US and developed into a full-blown international banking crisis, with the collapse of investment bank Lehman Brothers on September 15, 2008. Excessive risk taken by banks such as Lehman Brothers helped to magnify the financial impact globally. Massive bailouts of financial institutions and other monetary and fiscal policies were employed to prevent a possible collapse of the world's financial system. The crisis was nonetheless followed by a global economic downturn, the Great Recession. The trend that proceeds to follow every stock market crash is millions of individuals losing their jobs, their life savings, and property due to the crash of stock markets. Backtracking to the stock market crash of 1929, the aftermath, the aftermath of the stock market resulted in the loss of around $14 billion of wealth, and this is the equivalent of somewhere close to $1 trillion in today's money. After this crisis, the SEC, better known as the Securities and Exchange Commission, was born. The responsibility of the SEC was to ensure that there is regulatory rules that is followed to prevent another crash like the crash of 1930s. The 2008 stock market crash is very unique. It began with the burst of the US housing bubble in 2004. After a long period of steadily increasing housing pricing, more families were being able to take care of their mortgages than previously possible. Lenders had started engaging in practices called subprime lending, lending to risky borrowers who would not normally be qualified for a mortgage to buy a home. The subprime mortgages typically came with a low interest rate for the first few years and then a drastic increase. Hedge funds and others sold mortgage backed securities and collateralized debt. A mortgage backed security is a financial product whose price is based on the value of the mortgages that are used for collateral. once you get a mortgage back from a bank, it sells to a hedge fund on the secondary market. Interest rates on the subprime mortgages shot up. Many new homeowners were unable to pay or refinance. The crisis should have been confined to U.S. homeowners only. Unfortunately, the banks and lenders making these loans had sold the debt to investors. The debt assets had been diced up and sold to other investors and banks around the world in complicated financial packages that few people seem to fully understand. On the graph to my right, you can see that in 2006, $600 billion worth of subprime loans were originated, most of which were securitized. That year, the subprime lending accounted for 23.5% of all mortgages originated. From 1996, you see the rate was 9.5, and 2006 being the peak before the housing bubble burst, it was at 23.5%. Stakeholders in this are the homeowners, the banks, government, people all across the world, and the SEC. The homeowners have the most to lose, which is their home. They invested a vast amount of money into their homes, and they were not allowed to stay in their homes because of the subprime lending interest rates that they could not afford. The banks' issues were the fact that they were the holders of the money, and also they were the holders of the debt that was being sold and traded around the world. The SEC, they were supposed to be in charge of regulating, ensuring that something like this should not happen in the world. This crisis was not only in America, but it was a global crisis. And this brings us to the Dodd-Frank Act. In 2010, President Obama passed the Dodd-Frank Act, named after former Financial Service Committee Chairman Chris Dodd and former Chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, Barney Frank, due to their extensive involvement in the act. The responsibility of this act was the consolidation of regulatory agencies, elimination of the National Thrift Charter, and new oversight council to evaluate system risks, comprehensive regulation of financial markets, including increased transparency, and also tools for financial crisis, including a resolution regime. This basically, in plain English, means more regulatory input from the SEC to ensure something like this doesn't happen again. And they also introduced new technologies to ensure this. The technology that was implemented in the Dodd-Frank Act is the National Exam Evolving Tool, also known as NEAT. This tool allows the examiner to access and analyze an extensive amount of data really fast in order to identify signs of insider trading and window dressing, front-running unethical use of investment opportunities, and any form of financial fraud. The other technology tool that is being utilized in the market is the Market Information Data Analytics System, also known as MIDAS. And this tool allows the individual who is responsible of regulating to collect and go through a very large amount of trading data from all markets across the network in an instant. Under the Dodd-Frank Act, not only will they monitor, but are also asking for disclosure from companies that are under investigation, but require them to a standard in presenting the information requested. During the past, we have seen many ups and downs from Wall Street. People had great success when the market was doing well, and great loss when the market is doing poorly. What is important to understand is that reform is always good to regulate the market, and if the Dodd-Frank Act was in place before the crisis, many Americans would have not been in the position they found themselves in 2008. The combination of reform and technology can't guarantee that history won't repeat itself, but it will put us in a position that will be better prepared to help the ship stay afloat before it's too late.